Well, today is the 29th of July. The month is almost over. We have seen many gyrations up and down the slope that hopefully will lead us to peace, but there are many, many sideways. This is Transition Protocol. We bring to you the news that you will not receive from corporate media, and most independent media does not have access to this. We are privileged to bring it to you. My dear colleagues, Pepe Escobar and Larry Johnson, will take it from here. But before they do, I just would like to request if you would be kind enough to subscribe, go to our paid subscription channel on Substack, become a paid member at $5. We will deliver all this security briefing to you directly in your mailbox every week. So please go ahead, Pepe.
Thanks, Mr. Z. Thanks, Larry. If you both allow me, and all of you, our audience, allow me, I want to start on a different track from compared to Iran, US, and what's happening on the negotiating table, or what is not happening in the negotiating table. According to the latest report we received, and I'm sure Larry will have a lot to talk about that. But first of all, I would like to concentrate on something immensely important, which was the attack, the joint attack by the US and the Saudis in Iraq. This was against the Hashd al-Shaabi, the popular mobilization units, which are part of the Iraqi government security because they are attached to the Ministry of Defense. They are completely supported by the most important Shiite authority in Iraq, Ayatollah Sistani, and they are really popular mobilization units. I happen to know them personally. I visited them before in the green zone in Baghdad, where they had a cell inside the green zone in Baghdad, which was still not American controlled, but the Americans were everywhere. And 2 years ago, I met them during Arba'in, the sacred procession. And we talked again, but off the record, without any interference from the then Iraqi government in place, which we had the opportunity to visit. I visited the prime minister's office. This was a previous, I would say, enlightened Iraqi administration. Nowadays, they have a brand new prime minister. He's a billionaire and essentially a useful idiot. He went to the US and he was like, ooh, our new guy, he's so cool and all that. He comes back to Iraq and there is an attempt to install a civil war in Iraq on his back. And on top of it, Iraqi territory is attacked by the Americans and the Saudis at the same time. Look, we have a very, very important information coming from Donald Trump himself. He said that the US Saudi attack on the Iraqi security forces, these are not Iraqi security, these are the popular mobilization forces, which are part of the Iraqi government security apparatus. Trump said that they were carried in coordination with the Iraqi government. Okay, breaking news to all of you. The President of the United States is lying. If the Iraqi government would have agreed to an attack on popular mobilization forces which are linked to their own Ministry of Defense inside Iraqi territory, this guy, the new useful idiot, the billionaire prime minister Al Zaidi, he would fall in 10 minutes. He wouldn't last in his palace seat in Baghdad for 10 minutes. So, the crazy thing is that this was already envisioned by the axis of resistance as a whole. This is part of a massive American Zionist attack against the whole axis of resistance. And the Hashd al Shabi, the popular mobilization forces, are, I would say, an umbrella of forces in Iraq. They are very, very powerful, very well weaponized. They have immense popular support, which is something that I could see for myself when I was in Arbain 2 years ago. We were a very small group. We were taken to Arbain from Baghdad to Karbala on a military helicopter. In fact, the government took us over there. They dropped us on a site like 10 kilometers away from the shrine, but we were free to roam around, which is exactly what I did. I was roaming around and I said, look, take me to al-Shaabi commanders wherever they are. And they did. And on top of it, I had pilgrims from Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, sub-Saharan Africa, an absolutely outstanding opportunity to see how these popular mobilization forces, they are really popular all across Iraq. And now they are being bombed by the American Saudis in Iraqi territory. So this is something that the Yemenis had already cracked because Yemeni intelligence, and I think I discussed this with you guys already in previous shows, they identified that the Americans were preparing a massive offensive, not only against Iran, but against the whole axis of resistance. Ansarallah in Yemen, Hezbollah, Iran, and of course the Hashd al-Shaabi, the Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq. So this may be the first salvo. They got the right pretext to start going after the Iraqi resistance. So this is all interconnected. The projected American offensive against the axis of resistance with Yemeni intel had already they did all the math necessary days ago before they started their blockade of Saudi Arabia. And one of my Yemeni friends, no, it's not even a source, it's a friend, he told me, yes, we're not thinking of doing this now. We did it because we wanted to preempt the possible American offensive. So, this, for all of you, Mr. Z, for Larry, and all of you, our audience, I hope it gives at least to all of you uh, the basic lineaments of this is a war against the axis of resistance as a whole. Okay, Larry, floor to you. Take it away and kill them.
Yeah. Well, the optimism that reigned. So here we are now, Wednesday. Over the last 4 days, that it looks like there was movement on the negotiations front. I think that's dead. Regardless of optimism or hope being expressed out of in Qatar or in Pakistan, the on the ground reality is telling a different story. Number one, the war with Saudi Arabia. We're now entering, adding to the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran. It's now the Saudis are going to be fighting Iraq and the Houthis and Iran, and they will be facing an attack on three fronts. And what's so foolish about this is when you look at the popular movement in Iraq, they're not sitting on vast amounts of infrastructure. They're not sitting on vast amounts of energy supplies. They're not, you can go kill them when they come together, but you can't do lasting infrastructure damage to them that would cripple Iraq. They can do that to Saudi Arabia, as can the Houthis, as can Iran. And so right now, the Saudi Arabia has embarked, it's almost on like it's committing suicide. There is no rational military reason in the world to justify Saudi Arabia going along with the United States and launching these attacks inside Iraq. Because, and I think it was Alistair Crook which cited the number, but the Iraqi forces, they're larger than Hezbollah, significantly so. And so that's a formidable military force. And then when you add to it the Houthis' dominance with missiles that Saudi Arabia cannot stop, they will not be able to prevent the destruction of Yanbu. and the destruction of pipelines and attacks on additional refineries. So all of a sudden, the the cash flow that they're counting on right now, that's going to stop flowing. And then what do? There's nothing on the military uh, charts that says, okay, you take action A and it's going to produce result B. So what they've done effectively has have opened up a new front in the war, which is going to hurt Saudis even more than this attack on Iran has hurt Saudi Arabia in terms of the fallout. Uh, we remain confronted with the supply, the global supply of oil continues to shrink. With each passing day, the amount of oil that used to go into the system is not there, and it's not being replaced. And in fact, additional restrictions that come out of Russia on exporting diesel fuel. And now we've got the threat that the United States is going to impose sanctions on China and India for the mere fact of trying to purchase Russian oil. So what we're looking at is more disruptions of the international financial world and with grave international economic repercussions. Now, it is with respect to India, China, and Korea, South Korea, and Japan. Those three areas in Asia, coupled with the Gulf Coast in the United States, on the Gulf of America, formerly known as Gulf of Mexico, those are the four areas where you've got the massive refineries that have been built to deal with sour crude. And when you're dealing with sour crude, the refineries have to have that means it's a more impure oil. Sometimes, in addition to having high sulfur content, it's what they call heavy crude. It's very thick. So it requires additional cooking, if you will. So when they build refineries, the refineries have to be built to deal with a particular kind. They either to deal with sour crude or to deal with sweet crude. Sweet crude refineries are much cheaper to build. They're less maintenance intensive because the processing that oil to produce either diesel or jet fuel is not as difficult. But the reason they build these heavy sour crude refineries, much more opportunity for profit. Those four areas now, the India, China, and the rest of Asia, South Korea, Japan, along with the Gulf Coast of the United States, continue to suffer significant shortages of that crude that's needed to produce diesel and jet fuel. As a result, there is now a global shortage of diesel and jet fuel, and that shortage is only going to grow, which then adds a whole nother dimension of economic pressure on the West to bring an end to this war with Iran. But instead, what we're seeing is instead of looking for an exit ramp, Donald Trump and his advisors now have decided they're going to go further, put themselves further in the ditch. And so this is an unwelcome prospect, but it's one that I think we're going to see the violence that's going to be visited not just upon Iran, but upon Israel and the other Gulf countries will be significant in the coming days.
Thanks, Larry. Mr. Z, just before you add to it, something that may be quite interesting for all of you, our audience, a few numbers about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has 20 million Arabs, essentially. The absolute majority of the population is anti-House of Saud. You never read about that in American mainstream media, obviously. And there are 10 million migrant workers. which, they don't have a dog in this fight. They are just there to try to make some money, same as the migrant workers in the Emirates and other parts of the GCC. They are surrounded or semi surrounded by at least 40 million Yemenis, deeply hostile and very well weaponized. 40 million Iraqis, very well weaponized. And 90 million Iranians, very well weaponized. So if they try something funny, even these numbers will tell you that you better think twice before you do anything funny. They are already doing it. And in fact, they are already paying the price in terms of Yemen. They are blockaded. It's a blockade against a blockade. And because they broke their own memorandum of understanding with Sana'a. Very few people know that Riyadh and Sana'a have a signed memorandum of understanding. Saudi Arabia broke it. So Yemen also broke it. And they went one step further, a blockade against your blockade. You want an aerial blockade against us? Okay, now you have a maritime blockade in the Red Sea and the Bab el Mandeb, with, of course, exceptions. Example, if you are a Saudi tanker, a mega tanker, and you are exporting oil to China, you can leave Yanbu, travel through the Red Sea, cross the Bab el Mandeb, and go all the way to Shanghai, no problem. If you are sending to some other Asian nations and other clients or to Europe, forget it. So you are blockaded. And you have to find a parking lot around Yanbu, which is what happened to dozens of tankers already. So the Saudis brought this on themselves. And now they believe, which is, it has to be an MBS calculation because he's the sole decider in Saudi Arabia. Let's pick a fight with the Iraqi resistance. This is beyond stupid. It's unqualifiably stupid. But this is where they are at the moment. Okay, Mr. Z, enlighten us
Well,
with something else.
I can only enlighten you with the information that I possess, which I shared with you before we started. And my contacts tell me that they were relieved. I used that term. They were relieved overnight. I mean, daytime over there in that region, that the optimism that we had discussed only yesterday, 24 hours ago, had not completely collapsed. And I pressed a little bit further and I said, "Why are you relieved?" And they said, "Well, there was at least an hour-long conversation between Araghchi and the Saudi, prince who is the foreign minister, and they both appeared to understand that this cannot go on, that this is not going to lead them into any place that is good for either of them, and that Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq was also either briefed on that conversation by Araghchi and the Saudi prince, or he was brought in. They were not going to tell me that. But they said that Pakistan was deeply involved in that communication. And at the end of the conversation, the consensus appeared to be that we have to bring the temperature down. So I totally, completely support everything that you said and everything that Larry said. I'm just reporting to you from the angle that I see, and which is the angle that you and I discussed yesterday, that there is a movement, and there is a recognition, even though very feeble, that this has to end, that this cannot go on. And they were relieved last night. I mean, my night, their daytime, that it did not collapse completely. Now, additional reporting that I can do is that the primary and perhaps the only real deterrent to a conversation further, moving along, is the absolute insistence by Iran that they are going to maintain the sequencing that they have outlined.
Of
First,
course.
talk about the Hormuz. Next, give us the money that you have been holding without any deductions that Trump has been threatening, and then we will discuss, once these two are done, we are going to discuss the nuclear talks, nuclear angle of it. And Trump keeps on talking about this in the reverse, and this is where things stand as of right now. But there is hope. And again, I'm expressing an intangible. There is a hope that there is going to be a formula that will be devised by the mediators, in which now I'm given to understand that Oman has also joined, along with Pakistan and Qatar, uh, proposing some kind of a middle ground that would satisfy Iran, that their relinquishing of the control is not going to be really relinquished, but it will be a window dressing enough to satisfy Trump. So this is where I stand.
Yeah,
Well,
look, I think I was going to
go
say, I
ahead,
just think, I
Larry.
think the problem is uh, satisfying Trump. That's mission impossible. Trump can never be satisfied unless he's the center of attention, unless he's being told that he's the smartest boy in the room, unless he is perceived as quote being in charge. Uh, the persistent betrayal of Iran by Trump, by the United States, is something that I think I think there's a growing number of Iranians that frankly are fed up with this and are unwilling to subject themselves to any more uh, attempts to be where Iran is Charlie Brown trying to kick the football that Lucy, who is Donald Trump, is holding. And if that's a if that is an obscure cultural reference for people, it just simply references a cartoon that was very popular in the United States in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, in which this little boy, oh, he desperately wanted to kick a football, but it was relying upon this girl who was she was a witch. She was a bad person. And she would say, here, I'll hold it for you. You come kick it. And every time he tried to kick it, she'd pull it away. That's the United States. Any deal that is offered on the table by the United States, no matter what assurances are provided to other countries, is not a deal that can be trusted. And I think when I look at the situation, I think Iran has come to the conclusion there is not a negotiated solution on the table. That they made it clear. If we're going to go back to the MOU, the only way we're going back is you're going to start the United States by complying with what you've already signed on to. Israel, removed from Lebanon, lift the blockade, lift the sanctions, and unfreeze the assets. Do that up front before anything else. Then and only then will we have something to talk about. Until that happens, there will be no further talks.
Absolutely correct, Larry. But the problem is, this is not going to happen because this is a battle for leverage, essentially. And Iran will never give up the number one leverage that they have. So that explains Galibaf, Araghchi, everybody, Pezeshkian, the status quo ante of the Strait of Hormuz. Forget it. Will never happen again. They are, for instance, with Oman, they are already discussing modalities, but without relinquishing their control of the navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Forget it. And obviously, for the Americans, this is the last thing that they would try to discuss. They want to start with discussing the nuclear dossier. For Iran, it's the exact opposite. If, like Larry outlined, you fulfill your commitments that you signed in the MOU, at the end, we'll start discussing the nuclear dossier. Because everybody knew that from the beginning, this was never about the nuclear dossier. This is an oil war, an oil choke point war, a petrodollar war, a connectivity corridor war, a war against Iran because Iran is sovereign and independent, a war against BRICS, against SCO, against Global South, against Russia, China, Iran, everything. Everybody knows that. If you have a brain with with an IQ over room temperature, not very common in the bad way, as we know. So this is something that I read in the Intel report that I absolutely love it. The greatest danger is no longer the negotiations suddenly disappear. is that the repeated controlled escalations eventually produce an uncontrolled event. Absolutely. So we are now in a we the pattern is being established of okay, this is a ersatz escalation ladder. So we escalate under control on one side, and we escalate under control on the other side. Sooner or later, you're going to have total out something totally out of control. It's obvious. You cannot escape escalation, military escalation ladders. They usually, Larry knows this very, very well. It's not pretty at the end. Something has to break, and when it breaks, it will break. It will break in a military way. The Iranians are not worried about that, as the Pakistani mediators know. The Iranians are saying, okay, even if it's a 0.1% tiny window of opportunity for diplomacy, we are okay, we'll go for it. But our fingers are on the trigger because we cannot trust the other side. And everybody knows, if you have Yemeni intel by themselves coming to the conclusion that the Americans were preparing a massive offensive against all of them in the axis of resistance, the Iraqis came to the same conclusion. The Iranians came to the same conclusion. Hezbollah knows this very, very well. So they know that the deciding factor will be the battlefield. And that's where, once again, both wars meet. These wars have been merged a long time ago because they were always the same war, the proxy war in Ukraine and the war of the US against Iran. It's the same war in two different battlefields. And now we have armchair American analysts finally discovering that the wars are connected. Of course, dummies, they were always connected. And what happened lately, which is immensely dangerous because the repercussions are mind boggling. Ukraine attacking an Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea. We cannot even begin to describe how dangerous that is. Because this is essentially NATO attacking Iran in the Caspian Sea, which is a Russian Iranian lake. Okay, there's Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan, but the real important powers in the Caspian Sea are Iran and Russia. And of course, the help that comes from Russia to Iran, including the Murmansk system, for instance, and some other items that are delivered by plane, it's the famous Caspian corridor from Astrakhan to Tehran, goes through the Caspian. And there's even an extra geoeconomic element because this is the Russian Iran Caspian that is part of the transportation corridor, which is the Silk Road between Russia, Iran, and India. It's not even China, India. So, Zelensky, obviously under orders because he's just a mere puppet, he was following orders, he was following NATO orders. Okay, let's bring Iran here so then we can get into the war side by side with the United States against Iran as well. This is beyond immense in terms of the possible repercussions. Apparently, somebody knocked on the door of Bankova in Kiev and told Zelensky this is a foolish move. And apparently, Ukraine is saying that this was a mistake, the attack on the Iranian vessel. Probably somebody did the math in Kiev and said, no, now that's it, it's over for us. But never forget that NATO as a whole, they will keep trying. They are losing against Russia. So they want to get into the other battlefield as well and maybe strike a victory against Iran side by side with the US. Immensely dangerous. So the chessboard keeps getting more and more complicated by the minute, in fact. So what can we do? Try to put yourselves in the position of the mediators, the Pakistanis, the Omanis, and the Qataris. It's a Sisyphus, they are rolling a rock the size of the Himalayas uphill. And just like Larry said, it's absolutely impossible to have Donald Trump sign and respect an agreement.
Yeah.
So what's the way out? Okay, I
Well,
leave the question in
uh,
the air.
yeah, yeah, okay, Larry and Pepe. Of course, I completely support everything that you said. There is nothing that you said that is beyond 100% accurate from the perspective that I have, which is that each and every factual statement that you made is supported by deep intel. Now, also, I would like Larry, particularly, to recognize the fact that there was, in fact, a meeting arranged by. I mean, the Pakistanis that I speak with don't tell me, whether it was JD Vance who initiated it or whether it's somebody close to him. But in the general headquarters of the Pakistani military, which is a very secure place, uh, a a very significant delegation from the Americans arrived, and they had a long meeting with Asim Munir, resulting in Asim Munir writing a personal letter to Supreme Leader that was well received. So I mean, sure, we are dealing with the insanity of Trump every single day, every single minute of the day. We see it as Americans sitting here witnessing the chaos, the absolute madness that emanates out of his mouth and the White House. But there are other forces also, and what I am told and what I believe represents the mediators is a hope that events outside his control will overtake him,
Well,
such as the paucity
Mr.
of
Z,
oil.
yeah.
Mr. Z, a quick question. Did your source
Yes.
mention if, for instance, Witkoff was part of this American delegation?
He
Did
actually
he
told
mention
me. I asked the question.
what kind
I
of
asked the
people
question.
were in this delegation?
Yeah, I specifically asked a question because I wanted to know whether it was a serious delegation or whether it was a clown car, with Witkoff and Kushner in it. And what this representative told me is that based on his understanding, Witkoff and Jared were not there, and that was the only reason I was told why Asim Munir even consented to meet with them. He
Right.
was not going to
So,
meet with Witkoff and Jared.
so your source assumed, although we don't have 100% confirmation, that these people are connected to the office of the vice president. Is that it?
A strong suspicion, yes.
Yeah. But see,
Suspicion.
here's the problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
here's the problem.
Yes.
Even your sources acknowledge that J.D. Vance's position is that the nuclear issue has to be addressed up front, not deferred. And Iran's position is absolutely not.
The opposite.
That that is not, so that's not an issue for negotiation. That's not one where, yeah, if the United States wants the talks to go forward, the United States will have to concede because Iran is not conceding on that issue, period. They will never concede on that issue until the United States complies with what it promised to do in the MOU. There will be no there may be communications, there may be messages passed from Washington to Pakistan and Pakistan to Iran, or Qatar to the United States and Qatar to Iran. But the fundamental decision, as far as the fundamental issue, is that the nuclear priority has to be taken care of first. Absolutely, Iran will not agree to that under
Right.
whatever pressure from whomever wants to apply the pressure. Not going to happen. Which means it's again, the United States has gone through this. They have their temper tantrum, and then the economic realities intrude, and the military realities intrude, and then they back out. We've seen the lie perpetuated that it was Iran that sought the talks, and yet we know for a fact that it was Qatar that was approached by the United States, and Iran turned them down. It was then Islamabad approached by the United States, then it would turn down, and then it was the Prime Minister of Iraq approached by the United States, and again rebuffed, rejected by Iran. Iran's position is black and white. There's no gray
Mhm.
in that. And until the United States is willing to do that, which my assessment is the United States is not willing to do that, this war will continue.
What do you make of the fact that economically and militarily the United States is going to be exhausted soon, very
Yeah,
soon?
yeah. Well, then they'll deal with it. They're not planning ahead. They're not thinking. They still believe their own lies that they can withstand, they can outlast Iran. That Iran's not that powerful, not that strong, and that the United States can ultimately compel Iran to surrender. Now, it's not true in terms of the actual what can happen, but the fact that the United States believes that dictates what's taking place. And it will be, I believe, the economic reality and the military reality of lack of weapon systems that will finally force the United States to, if they want to get an end to this, they're going to have to make concessions with Iran. But I think before we get to that stage, we're going to see an expanded war of Saudis against Iraq and Yemen, and to a lesser extent, Iran.
Absolutely. You
Pepe?
want to wrap it up, Mr. Z?
Uh, I would like to wrap it up with again, unfortunately, a lot of reality that is not very favorable to anything that anybody wants to hear. But the slim hope that I expressed to you before we started, which was a relief, not actually a hope, it was a relief from my contact that things had not collapsed. I mean, he was relieved that it had not collapsed, and then there was a slight degree of optimism that the economic reality and the military reality will catch up with certain quarters within Washington that will compel Trump to understand that this cannot continue without a
Yeah.
total collapse on the economic front, a complete incapacity on the military front. Well, we will keep our eyes open, and our sources will be communicating with us, and we will bring to you any significant development that takes place as we have done in the past. Thank you very much for being our very supportive audience that is growing, and we are very grateful to you for that. Please hit the subscribe button if you like what we do. Please hit the like button, and if you would like our security briefing to be delivered inside your mailbox, go to Substack, find us, same name, Transition Protocol, and become a paid member for $5 a month. A very small amount of money, and we will deliver at least 4 or 5 security briefings to you. And we will be back next week, Monday with Larry, Tuesday with Pepe, and Wednesday, like today, with all of us. And if something significant happens, we will bring it to you as we have always done. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Bye.